My name is Dara Whitfield. I was 31 years old and I worked as a permitting coordinator for a mid-sized civil engineering firm in Columbus, Ohio. I was not the most exciting person at a dinner table. I tracked deadlines, managed intake queues, and made sure the right signatures reached the right desks before the right dates. I was good at it because I did not panic and I did not skip steps. I kept records of everything, not out of suspicion but because that was how I had always operated. Somewhere in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet in my apartment, there was a folder for nearly every account I had ever touched. I had never thought much about it. It was just how I worked. My family had always described this as me being the quiet one, which was their way of saying I did not demand much and therefore did not receive much. I had accepted that for most of my adult life. I had even told myself it was a kind of freedom, not needing the room's attention, not requiring the validation. I was wrong about that, but I did not know it yet. There is a specific feeling that comes from being reliably present for people who have stopped registering your presence, and it does not announce itself all at once. It accumulates. It gathers in the background like a balance you haven't checked in a while, growing in a direction you didn't intend. The summer my younger sister announced her engagement, our house in Harwick, Ohio, became a different place. Cassie was 27 and she had been dating Marcus for 2 years, and the moment the ring appeared on her finger, the entire household reorganized itself around the event horizon of their wedding. My parents, my father especially, moved into a new gear. My mother started spreadsheets. My father started making phone calls to venues my family had no budget for, speaking with the confidence of a man whose finances were in far better shape than they were. I watched from Columbus and said nothing because saying something was not my role. Cassie had always been the story my parents told. She was the one who got the first phone call when something happened. She was the one my father introduced first when both of us were in the same room at a gathering, a reflex so old he didn't seem to notice it anymore, and neither did she. When Cassie was 23, she had gone through a difficult 6 months, and our family had organized itself around her recovery with a thoroughness I had never seen directed at anything I had faced. I was not bitter about it at the time. I understood the logic, she needed more, and so more was given. What I did not understand then was how completely that arrangement had calcified into a permanent structure. Cassie was the one who needed, and I was the one who provided, and neither role was ever discussed because neither role needed to be. Systems don't require discussion. They just run. I watched all of this from a careful distance. I did not say anything about the gap between the plans and the money. That was not my role. My role, as it had always been, was to be useful without being visible. The checking account had started 4 years earlier. My father had asked me to be added as a joint holder on a household account, originally for convenience during a period when both my parents were working reduced hours and the bills needed reliable management. I was living in Columbus by then, but I logged in every 2 weeks, made sure the utilities were covered, flagged anything that looked wrong. It was a practical arrangement. Nobody called it a favor. It was just the thing I did. Over time, the account became something more than a utility account. My parents' income stabilized, then fluctuated again when my father cut his hours further. I began covering shortfalls, not with drama, not with announcements, just transfers that kept the lights on. My mother knew. My father knew in the way that people know things they prefer not to examine directly. Cassie knew in the way that a person knows something that does not affect them and therefore does not require their attention. Cassie and I had never been close in the way that some sisters describe, the phone calls, the inside references, the reflexive loyalty. We were civil. We occupied the same family without much friction because we occupied different quadrants of it. She was the one my parents talked about at their friends' gatherings. She was the one my father introduced first when both of us were in the room. I had learned not to stand where that comparison would find me. The favoritism was not theatrical. It was structural. It was the way a decision got made about who sat where at Thanksgiving, or who got called first with news, or whose opinion was sought and whose was not. My father loved me, I believe that, but he loved Cassie in the active, vocal, room-filling way, and he loved me in the background way, the way you love something reliable that you've stopped noticing. In the 14 months between Cassie's engagement and her wedding date, I contributed in the ways I had always contributed, which is to say steadily and without ceremony. The household utilities continued to run through the joint account. Electricity, gas, the internet bill. My parents had never switched out of the bundled plan I had set up. Those came to $614 a month, and I covered the gaps when the balance ran short, which was often. There were months I covered the full amount without a gap, because the balance had been drawn down by other things my parents had not told me about until after. I did not ask them to stop. I just adjusted the next transfer and moved on. Beyond the regular amounts, the wedding created new ones. Cassie had chosen the Callaway Event Center in Breckton Township, a venue that required a non-refundable deposit held by a third-party coordination service. The florist required a booking deposit. The photographer's contract required half up front. My father called me on a Tuesday evening and explained the situation with the particular calm of someone who already knows the answer and is only going through the motion of asking. I said I could help with the deposits. The total came to $7,340 across 3 vendors, paid out of my personal account and never mentioned again. I did not ask for a repayment schedule. I did not ask for a thank you. Those were not the terms of the arrangement because the arrangement had no stated terms. It had only the expectation that I would continue, and I did. I was also the person who made the calls when a vendor went quiet. I was the one who noticed the photographer's contract had a clause about overtime hours that nobody had read. I flagged it to my mother, who thanked me and told Cassie, who treated it as information that had arrived without a source. I drove to Harwick on a Saturday in February to help move furniture for a pre-wedding family portrait session because the photographer needed a different background and nobody else had a truck. I drove back to Columbus that same night. The next day, Cassie sent a group photo from the session to the family chat. She did not tag me or mention the furniture. I did not respond to the group chat message. I set my phone on the counter and made dinner. The last normal interaction I had with Cassie before everything shifted was on a Sunday in April. She called to ask whether I had the original contract paperwork for the venue because she had misplaced her copy. I found it, photographed every page and sent the files within the hour. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That was the conversation. The text arrived on a Wednesday evening at 9:47 p.m. I was at my apartment on Fenner Street in Columbus, sitting at the kitchen table with a permitting intake file open on my laptop. My phone lit up. I looked at it. You're not invited to the wedding. Goodbye, loser. I read it once. Then I read it again. Not because the words were unclear, but because I wanted to be certain I had not misread the tone, that there was not some register of irony or misdirection I was missing. There was not. I set the phone face down on the laminate countertop. The next buzz came through the surface, faint, traveling through the material rather than through the speaker. I felt it in my wrist. I picked the phone back up and called my father. He answered on the second ring. Did you see Cassie's message? I said. I saw it, he said. Did you say anything to her about it? Dara, you know how she gets before big events. She's under a lot of pressure. She told me I'm not invited to the wedding, I said. You're being dramatic. It was just venting. She said goodbye. She called me a loser. She's stressed, he said. You could be a little more understanding. You don't have to make everything so difficult. Something settled in my chest. Not anger, not yet, not disbelief, something more like a measurement clicking into place. I'm not making anything difficult, I said. You called me to make a problem out of it. That's making it difficult. I called you because your daughter told me I'm not invited to her wedding and you liked the message. A pause. I didn't like it. I can see the reaction, Dad. It was an accident. Okay, I said. Look, he said, and his voice shifted into the register I had heard my whole life. Bureaucratic, patient, faintly warm in the way that assumed the matter was already resolved. This is between you and Cassie. You two need to work it out. Don't drag me into it. You're already in it. You've always been in it. What does that mean? It means I've been watching how this family works for 31 years and I understand it pretty clearly. Now you're being ungrateful, he said. After everything your mother and I have done. I did not say anything. You had every advantage, he said. You have a good job. You have your apartment. You didn't want for anything growing up. I still did not say anything. All Cassie wanted was a nice wedding, he said. And you're turning it into something about you. I'm not turning anything into anything, I said. I just wanted to know if you thought the message was acceptable. I think you need to let it go, he said. That's what I think. Okay, I said. Good night, Dad. I ended the call. My mother called 11 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was 2 minutes and 40 seconds long. I did not listen to it that night. Her voice in the first 3 seconds was enough to tell me the shape of it. Apologetic on Cassie's behalf, managing, performing concern while not actually questioning anything. I set the phone face down again. I sat at the kitchen table for a while. The permitting file was still open on the screen. I did not close it. I just sat there with my hands flat on the table, looking at the words without reading them. I did not make the decision impulsively. I want to be clear about that because it matters. I got up from the table. I walked to the kitchen and filled a glass of water. I stood at the counter and drank half of it, looking out at the parking lot through the window over the sink. The light was the same as it always was at that hour. Nothing looked different. That was the thing that stayed with me afterward, how ordinary everything looked while the decision was forming. I walked back to the table and sat down. I opened my laptop. I logged into the joint account. I transferred the balance to my personal account. I removed the automatic payment routing for the household utilities, the electric, the gas, the internet, and redirected each one to a null address, which in practice meant they would fail on the next billing cycle unless someone set up new payment information. I did not close the account. I simply removed what was mine and stopped what I had been running. I closed the laptop. I finished the glass of water at the kitchen sink. I went to bed. My phone started at Thursday, 6:14 a.m. I was already awake. I had set an alarm for 6 because I had an early intake deadline. The first notification came through before the alarm sound finished, a text from my father. Then another. I picked the phone up and looked at the screen without unlocking it. The preview text was enough. Dara, what did you do? The account. Call me right now. I set the phone on the nightstand and got dressed. By the time I had made coffee, there were 30 texts from my father and the missed call counter had climbed past 40 between my mother and Cassie. I placed the phone face down on the counter. I could feel the buzzing through the laminate, the same faint vibration as the night before, traveling up through the surface. I drank my coffee. I stood at the counter the same way I had stood the night before, looking at the same window. The parking lot was lighter now. A neighbor's car was already gone. At 7:02 a.m., I picked up the phone and called my father back. He answered before the first ring completed. What did you do? He said. I removed the payments I was running, I said. You drained the account. The electric bill is going to bounce. There. The account had my money in it, I said. I moved my money. That is a family account, he said. I know. I've been managing it for 4 years. You can't just Dara the vendors. The photographer still has a balance. That balance is in the contract between you and the photographer, I said. My name isn't on that contract. A silence. You're doing this because of a text message. I'm doing this because of a pattern, I said. The text was just the last thing. Your sister is getting married in 6 weeks, he said. His voice was still measured, still carrying that bureaucratic warmth, the tone that assumed calm could be imposed from the outside and I would absorb it. 6 weeks, Dara. You're going to do this to her 6 weeks before her wedding. She told me I wasn't invited, I said. So I'm not sure what I'm doing to her wedding. She didn't mean it. She wrote it. People say things. I understand that, I said. And I removed payments I was making. People do things. This is ungrateful, he said. Everything we've done for you. I want to show you something, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the steel ring binder clip holding 4 years of bank statements. The folder I had kept since the account was opened, bent slightly where I had gripped it hard during that first setup meeting. I laid it on the kitchen table in front of me. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the transaction history and filtered for all transfers originating from my personal account into the joint account over 48 months. I took a screenshot and sent it to the family group chat, which included my father, my mother, and Cassie. "I just sent you 4 years of transfers," I said. "Every shortfall I covered. Every deposit I fronted. The vendor payments. All of it." A silence that lasted long enough that I checked whether the call had dropped. "That was your choice," he finally said. "It was," I said. "And so was this. You're going to damage this family over money." "You told me I was ungrateful," I said. "I wanted you to have the number in front of you when you said it." "Dara." "The account is still open," I said. "You can set up new payment information. That part is straightforward." "This isn't over," he said. "I know," I said. "Good luck with the wedding, Dad." I ended the call. I set the phone on the table next to the binder-clipped folder. I looked at the screenshot still on my screen, the column of transfers, the dates running across 4 years, the amounts adding up in a way that had no drama in it, just arithmetic. I closed the app. I put the folder back in my bag. I went to work. That was 8 months ago. I still work at the same firm in Columbus, and I was promoted to senior coordinator in September. A title change that came with a modest salary adjustment and, more meaningfully, a smaller intake queue and a second monitor. I use the second monitor for the documentation side of projects, which used to get shuffled to a second window and now has its own dedicated screen. Small things matter when you spend 40 hours a week at a desk. The binder clip folder sits in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet now. I don't open it often, but a few weeks ago I pulled it out to check a date for an unrelated reason. I needed to confirm when I had first set up the autopays, because I was canceling a different account and the bank needed documentation. The clip had left a faint impression on the top edge of the folder from years of gripping. I noticed it and put the folder back. 6 weeks after that Thursday morning, Cassie got married. I was not there. I don't know how the photographer situation resolved. I don't know whether the electric bill bounced and how long it took them to sort out the payment routing. These are not things I tracked. My father sent one message in October. It was 2 sentences. He said he hoped I was doing well and that he thought we should find a time to talk. I read it on a Tuesday afternoon during a break between intake reviews. I thought about it for a while. I did not reply. Not from coldness exactly, more from the recognition that the conversation he was proposing would require me to receive something I hadn't been offered before, and I wasn't sure he understood that yet. Maybe he would get there. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I was not going to manage that timeline for him. My mother has called twice since then. I let both go to voicemail. The messages were kind in tone and careful in content, which is how she has always communicated. Everything slightly indirect, every sentence leaving a door open that she doesn't quite step through. I appreciated the effort without being moved by it. Cassie has not contacted me. I live quietly in Columbus. I have a good filing system, a coffee maker that works correctly, and a second monitor at work that I genuinely use. I run the Fenner Street apartment with the same attention I gave the family's account, not because I'm performing anything but because it's how I operate. Nothing bounces. Nothing gets missed. The difference is that everything I manage now is mine. There is a version of this story where I waited. Where I absorbed the text and the liked reaction and the phone call and let it settle back into the arrangement that had always existed. I know that version. I lived adjacent to it for a long time. People will tell you that family is worth the compromise. They mean well when they say it. But compromise is only the right word when both sides are giving something up. When one person is the account and the other is just a holder, that's not compromise. That's a system. And systems can be changed. The folder is in the bottom drawer. The clip is still bent from that first meeting. I didn't straighten it. I don't know why, exactly. Maybe because it's the most honest record I have of how long I held on before I let go. If this story made you think about something you've been carrying quietly, share it with someone who'd understand why it took this long.